Fallout 4 challenge runs are really popping off on YouTube lately, and I decided to do a run on Fallout 4 no one had ever done before. And after playing this run, I think I'm gonna find out why. I decided to beat Fallout 4's main quest as an alcoholic. Wait, I mean in the game, not me playing the game. I'm not an alcoholic. You get what I mean. To make this challenge work effectively, I set out some rules. The first rule, of course, is that our character must be drunk at all times. This would be enforced the second I leave Sanctuary and venture out into the Commonwealth. This would give me ample time to find some booze before our character must set out on his quest. Our character for this run is a man of sheer determination and recklessness. He was sculpted by the gods of liquor and was molded up the world's best drunk. Ladies and men, I present to you Jim. Jim is a simple man. He wakes up, he drinks, and he kind of wanders around the house all day, looking for things to do. His stats are a great reflection of how his habit has spiraled throughout the years. With 3 strength, 4 perception, and 4 endurance, Jim has the decent abilities to spot danger and run away from them. But with his 3 strength, his ability to fight is poor. That's why his 6 charisma and 7 luck are his usual tools to help him out of any situation he doesn't want to be a part of. If he can't talk his way out of a fight, he can certainly luck out and find some friends to help him. Jim's also agile enough to dodge a punch with 5 agility and even sneak one in if he isn't passing out on a bar stool. And lastly, Jim's intelligence. Due to his severe booze houndry over the years, Jim's intelligence has dwindled to a mere 1. This means that Jim's rare moments of brilliance often put him in the spotlight as some sort of savant. A drunk, idiot savant. And of course, this is where the usual Fallout malarkey starts. The bombs fall, we go into our vault, we get frozen with a blood alcohol level of 0.3%, wake up, watch someone who looks a lot like Jim shoot our wife and take our small dog, go for a little nap and wake up again to try and find a kebab. I may have paraphrased that last bit, but you get my drift. The first thing Jim did after taking a 210-year drunken nap is scour the vault looking for anything to drink. Unfortunately for Jim, the cockroaches drank all of the beer, making them super strong and big. This left Jim with one choice: he had to leave the vault. Already forgetting that his wife is dead and someone stole his rabbit or something? Jim made his way to the surface. He was surprised to see not much had changed. This was what the world had looked like the last time he was sober. The last time he was sober was the spring of 2039. He lost his virginity later that night. Jim returned to his home in Sanctuary and turned the place upside down looking for a beverage. When all he found was a comic book and a personal favourite of his, he decided it was in the neighbourhood's best interest if he found a new home for their valuables. The new home being his back pocket. Taking wigs and clothes, Jim still didn't find any beer. It wasn't until he found his dick of a neighbour's bunker that he found something to drink. And the drink he found was Gwyneth Stout, another personal favourite of Jim's. He searched the rest of the houses trying to find more and was disappointed with his results. Only finding himself enough alcohol for a singular day, Codsworth suggested that Jim should venture out into this brave new world to try and find some more. Just before setting foot on Sanctuary's bridge, Jim took a swig of his first drink in 210 years. The sensations of taste and elation Jim felt were slowly faded out by a voice he heard. The voice whispered, "Just one more brewski, buddy." The voice was Jim. Jim was now against the clock. He swore an oath to never be sober again on that fateful night in the spring of 2039. And due to his limited stock and beverages, Jim needed more to keep his party going. And this is where the next 3 rules come into this run. The second rule for this run is that the difficulty must be set on very hard. This is not a requirement if you're doing this challenge at home, I just think it adds to the spirit of the challenge. Due to Jim's constant intoxication, he finds everything normal about life rather difficult. It also shows the buffs and debuffs of alcohol make a noticeable difference in this challenge. The third rule is that Jim can only use pistols and grenades. Once again, this is not a requirement for this run, but I think it adds to Jim's character that he isn't experienced or strong enough to fire or lift rifles and shotguns. After all, Jim only has 3 strength. The final rule is the penalty rule. If Jim forgets to drink alcohol, he must give away 1,000 caps per minute. And trust me, Jim does pay up eventually. I apologise for interrupting the flow of the video, but context was needed to explain why Jim was about to act a certain way. And even with that context I just gave you, it won't be much help figuring out what's going on. After leaving Sanctuary, Jim stole a dog and stumbled his way into Concord, the average Monday morning. Jim became acquainted with some of the local hoodlums and shared a few goofs and gaffes with them. Ignoring the screams for help because museums don't sell beer, Jim jogged to a personal favourite stop of his. His old haunt was of course the Drumlin Diner, still the biggest shithole in the Commonwealth. The latest owner of the diner was having trouble with dealers and addicts. Jim found himself back in his glory days. Being a certified charmer with the worst breath in Massachusetts, he convinced the two parties to agree to a ceasefire. He only did this so he could buy more alcohol. Jim did not solve the conflict, he merely delayed it for his own convenience. It was here Jim had an idea, the genesis of his villain arc. He decided he would break into the place where it all began for him, the Beantown Brewery. That was the place where he had got his first job, and where he had got his first sip of the beautiful brown bubbly stuff. Before Jim knew it, he was outside the doors, salivating at the thought of the prize he knew laid ahead. Going in the front door, he was quickly met by two worrying sights: lack of production and empty bottles. And where there were empty bottles, there were full bellies. Jim swiftly promoted himself from logistics to security and took care of the hoodlums that had set up base. After exterminating the invasive species of other drunks, Jim's worst reality came to fruition. The invasive species had drank all the beer. Only carrying out a few bottles from the bar and brewery, Jim's race against the clock was now as tense as ever. He decided to change plan and instead make his way to downtown Boston. Here he had hoped that surely one of his favourite spots would still be open. He didn't have to look that far to find that the great green jewel of the Commonwealth had been converted into a city. Diamond City. With the city on lockdown and no way to get in, Jim did what he did best, and gaslit Diamond City security into thinking he was the boss of the operation. After apologising to Jim and the random woman Jim was now standing naked in front of, Diamond City security opened their gate, only for Jim to make a beeline past security and to the nearest pub he could find. Settling on the Dugout Inn, it wasn't long before Jim had bought their entire stock of alcohol. As Jim was on his way out, a man who was somehow weirder than Jim commented on his bone structure. Peculiar. After drinking enough to kill a horse, Jim found himself in a set of clothes he doesn't remember wearing and got a little homesick. It was at this point Jim had really forgotten what was going on. To him, he had broken into Fenway Stadium, sauced out of his mind, the average Thursday night. And he decided to do what he would usually do, and take the subway home, all while forgetting the bombshell. Doing a little drunk jiggy, Jim made his way to Park Street Station. It was here where Jim was reminded of the realities he'd drunk to forget, but always remembered. The station was overrun by gangsters. Jim did the only sane thing he knew and did the public service of eliminating the triggermen. Clearly becoming more violent the more intoxicated he got, Jim eventually made his way to the platform. The only issue was that the train driver must have been more drunk than Jim, because the platform was in shambles. Deciding to walk the line with a trolley and a prayer, Jim found the stronghold the gangsters seemed to spawn from. He may only have one intelligence, but where there are criminals, alcohol isn't usually far behind. So he found himself on the path of the righteous, eliminating any threat in the hopes of a tasty beverage at the end. With more than a few mishaps along the way, Jim eventually made his way into the base of the operation. What he found was a shouty man who started to give him a headache. Becoming more unhinged by the beverage, Jim attempted to execute the shouty man with the hope he would have a little liquor on his person. Eventually succeeding, all Dino had was a password for his terminal, but that had the least of Jim's curiosity. What interested Jim was the Tin Man, the man of metal. Arigato Mr. Roboto behind the window. Unlocking the door and talking to the Tin Man, he told Jim he was investigating a case of a missing person. It was at this moment that Jim had remembered for the first time he lost a son. Maybe. He honestly couldn't make heads or tails of everything that happened before his cryogenic sleepy time, due to the alcohol rotting his brain while he was frozen. This didn't matter right now, because the Tin Man and Jim needed to leave the stronghold. Fighting tooth and nail together, Dogmeat and Nick made a great team while Jim found himself injured more than once. Eventually, Jim and the Tin Man made their way through the maze that was Vault 114. Jim even found a decent amount of bourbon and whiskey, more alcohol than he found at the Beantown Brewery. This act of public service was proving just as fruitful as Jim was hoping. After clearing the tomb for these bad men, the robot and the drunk found the exit together. The two were confronted by the boss and some lady who liked baseball. Jim, not really understanding the situation, tried to woo the fellow baseball enthusiast and quickly made a few unfortunate demises before he cheesed the combat sequence. Yes, Jim did all that. Definitely not a narrator self-insertion. After defeating the big bad boss, the two made their way to the surface and had a little conversation. The Tin Man told Jim he could look for his son as a thank you for rescuing him. Jim, not really listening, agreed. He agreed with the Tin Man because the Tin Man amused him. And Nick amused Jim the same way a monkey amuses a child. Life could be dreamy. Nick left while Jim was thinking about monkeys. And Jim proceeded to black out and find himself in a new set of clothes at the Tin Man's office. It was here he finally talked about what had happened in the vault. He described the kidnapping of what he thought was his son. Jim thought it could have been his budgie. He's still not sure.
A budgie? I fucking love budgies.
He also described the man who was in charge. It was a bald man with a long face and a husky demeanour with a heavy trigger finger. The Tin Man surprisingly had a lead, and Jim went along with him. It was here where Jim had broken into the mayor's office, stole the keys for the house right out of the mayor's pocket, and threw a desk fan off into the sunset. The old one too. Steal their keys and break the desk fan. Really crushes the spirit. Jim accidentally picked up this desk fan, and the Tin Man didn't like it. He did his public service and converted Jim into a wine fountain. Learning from his mistakes, Jim left the desk fan where it belonged, 5 stories below where he found it. He made it to the mystery man's house unscathed. It was here where Jim and the Tin Man's friendship blossomed. The two ransacked Mr. Kellogg's house and took anything worth of value. It was a real bonding experience for Jim because he found a friend that didn't judge him for who he was. Who he was a violent, lying, thieving drunk who had stumbled out of a time capsule and was finding a place in this desolate wasteland. While Jim was getting sentimental about himself, Nick was doing some detective work and found a clue. A cigar. The Tin Man told Jim that his faithful companion, Dogmeat, could track down Mr. Kellogg just by the scent of his unique brand of cigars. Jim seriously doubted Dogmeat's tracking abilities, considering he found him at a petrol station. But Jim trusted the Tin Man, and listened to his friend. Jim and Dogmeat travelled from one side of the Commonwealth to the other, with the goal of finding the man who wronged Jim, and to make him pay. Dogmeat led Jim to a building, a fort even. Inside this fort was an endless army of tin men, but not the nice detective kind. No. Being slaughtered, and eventually slaughtering the endless brigade of metal men, Jim made his way through the floors like they were Tic Tacs, fueled by his enraged alcohol-induced psychosis. With dwindling resources and limited bullets, Jim made every shot count against the resilient robots, until he found himself in the crown room of Fort Hagen, the armory. Picking up various weapons and munitions, his bloodlust for the metal men had yet to be quenched. Being taunted by Mr. Kellogg while decimating his forces, Jim was now ready to take on public enemy number 1. Losing control of his body, Jim uncharacteristically launched a nuke at Kellogg, with sheer fury and violence with a seasoning of no remorse. To Jim's surprise, Kellogg took it on the chin and proceeded to give the same pain back 10 times over. After being obliterated an embarrassing number of times, Jim clutched the fuck up and found the strats to defeat the metal men and Mr. Kellogg. A 10mm here, a fusion cell there, even the sparse Molotov cocktail caused the cockerel to fall. Jim, embracing his full stress-induced insanity, started to rummage around Kellogg's displayed insides and found many alien parts attached to its organic ones. He reminded Jim of a Casio. Jim, now gone beyond the threshold of his alcohol-induced psychosis, claimed Kellogg's armor and his trusty .44 revolver as a trophy. With his sanity and even his being at their frayed ends, he now donned the armoured attire. Wielding the fierce firearm in one hand and a bottle of bourbon in the other, Jim revelled in his thoughts. He was a man from a different lifetime, a different era. The man he found himself behaving was not the one he woke up as in that frozen tomb however long ago. He had become Kellogg too. And it was here Jim needed to rest. He needed to sort the demons in his mind and find their meaning at the bottom of a bottle, rather than unseaming someone from the naves to their chaps and finding that momentary rage again with their heart in his hand. So he rested, processing the overwhelming emotions of nuking a man in close range combat. And this is where Jim's story ends for now. But wait, before you leave, I'd like to tell you that I streamed Jim's entire playthrough on Twitch. My channel name on Twitch is the same as my YouTube, if you'd like to follow me there and catch some more streams. I would also like to thank you for watching the video and would ask you to like the video if you want to see more videos like this. The feedback is really appreciated. And subscribe if you really like this one, because you can bet your ass I'm going to make some more. Alright, thanks for watching. Have a good one.